After over 9 months into the Ukraine war, the West has finally reached an agreement that intends to deny Russia of war resources.
Vladimir Putin says he's banning oil exports to select nations from February.
The global energy market is becoming increasingly competitive. With its vast oil reserves, who will come out on top in the battle for control of this precious resource? Will it be Russia and its significant investments in the petroleum industry, or will the USA and Europe's joint resources be enough to tip the scales in their favor? In this video, we'll explore the ongoing oil war between these two global powerhouses and why this insurance company is sending billions of dollars to help Russia dominate the oil industry. We'll also explore the various strategies employed by the EU, US, and UK, examine how Russia responds to these efforts, and discuss the potential consequences of this economic warfare on all countries involved. So, how is Russia coping with the price cap strategy implemented by the G7 countries in the ongoing oil war between Russia, the United States, and Europe? Watch the video till the end to find out. Oil prices plunged to $20 per barrel at the start of the pandemic in 2020, then rebounded to pre-pandemic levels of roughly $60 per barrel in early 2021 as the economy recovered, before surging above $100 per barrel after Russia invaded Ukraine. The struggle in Ukraine is being fought on two fronts, one physical, in which Russia is deploying military power, and one economic, in which contracts and agreements are being negotiated between various organizations such as states, banks, and enterprises. Both of them are separate battlegrounds in the war. The United States and other European countries have recently placed extraordinary financial penalties and sanctions on Russia, attempting to destabilize the country's economy. The United States and its allies have implemented a series of significant sanctions against Russia to limit its access to the global financial system and weaken its military capabilities. The most notable measures include freezing the assets of Russia's central bank in the US, blacklisting a major Russian sovereign wealth fund, and efforts to remove several Russian banks from the SWIFT interbank messaging service, which would greatly hinder their ability to move money internationally. The US Treasury Department has also imposed sanctions on two large Russian banks, and their subsidiaries expanded restrictions on purchasing Russian debt and targeted top Russian officials, including President Vladimir Putin, with personal sanctions. In addition, in an effort to reduce Russia's military capabilities, the US Commerce Department has prohibited exports of high-tech equipment such as computers and semiconductors to the country. The export restrictions also extend to goods produced in other countries using American technology. The United States also created a transatlantic task force aimed to lock up the wealth of sanctioned Russian individuals and companies by targeting their private jets, yachts, and luxury homes. However, these sanctions didn't do well for the West itself. As of 2021, Russia is one of the world's largest exporters of oil. Before the sanctions, most of Russia's oil, about 60%, was exported to Europe, and 20% was exported to China. In 2021, Russia supplies 45% of Europe's gas, although supplies began to drop towards the end of the year. Additionally, a third of Europe's oil comes from Russia. However, the United States did not import significant quantities of oil or gas from Russia in 2021. The US did import some specialized petroleum products, such as crude oil from Russia, and the country provides 20% of US imports of such products. The escalation of the Russo-Ukrainian conflict on February 24, 2022 led to a significant impact on the global oil market as a result of the sanctions imposed on Russia by countries supporting Ukraine. By May 2022, the International Energy Agency reported that 3 million barrels per day of Russian oil output, representing nearly 3% of the world's production, had been removed from the global market. In response to the sanctions, Russia cut its oil production and sold it to other countries at high prices, leading to a global increase in oil prices. However, despite the sanctions, Russia was still able to benefit from this by selling oil at a premium. To further stop Russia from selling oil and benefiting from it, Europe, along with all G7 countries, opted for a price cap strategy. The Western nations' response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine entered a new and more aggressive phase, as the G7 and EU nations have come together to implement a price cap on Russian oil, along with an EU embargo on Russian crude oil imports. This move is aimed at restricting Russian oil revenue, which has been a significant source of income for the country's federal budget. The G7's aspirations in implementing this price cap are ambitious, as they aim to restrict Russian oil revenue while not increasing global oil prices. This is a difficult task, as the oil market is complex and influenced by many factors. On Friday, the European Union agreed to a threshold price of $60 per barrel. Later in the day, the Group of 7 nations and Australia also approved the deal. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, along with other allies in the Group of 7, has proposed a cap on the price of Russian oil as a way to limit Russia's earnings while keeping the oil flowing to the global economy. The intention behind this proposal is to inflict financial harm on Moscow without causing a sharp increase in oil prices should Russia's oil suddenly be removed from the global market. Insurance companies and other businesses involved in shipping oil would only be able to deal with Russian crude if the oil is priced at or below the cap. Most insurers are located in the EU. And Norway insured over 85% of ships carrying Russian crude oil, and they still insure 65% of those ships today. This gives them significant leverage in implementing the cap, as most insurers will have to abide by the cap in order to continue insuring ships carrying Russian crude oil. This means that these companies will have to turn down any offers for Russian crude oil that exceed the proposed cap in order to stay compliant. Now, before we move on, if you're not subscribed to the BizStudy YouTube channel, you need to subscribe before the end of the year. We're trying to get to 50,000 subscribers, so please subscribe so we hit our goal and reach many more people. Now back to the video. While the mainstream insurance industry will not provide cover to such trade to and from Russia, there are several smaller entities in Asia which will do so, a senior executive at a Western Protection and Indemnity or P&I club said. The proposal for a cap on Russian oil prices is a significant move in the effort to contain Russia's aggression. The long-term consequences of this move could have a significant impact on Russia's economy. Russia's heavy dependence on oil exports and revenues is well known. The G7 nations will pressure Russia to reduce its military operations and return to the negotiation table by capping the price of their oil exports. However, Russia still has the plan to save itself from an economic collapse. Russia's response to the proposed cap on the price of its oil exports has been to state that it will not observe the cap and will halt deliveries to countries that do. This move could significantly impact the global oil market, as Russia is one of the largest oil-producing countries in the world. One strategy could be illegally selling oil by turning off the automatic identification system. For those who don't know what an automatic identification system is, here's a quick overview. The Automatic Identification System, or AIS, is an electronic navigational system used for tracking ships' locations while exporting oil. This system allows vessels to identify and track one another by receiving and transmitting transponder signals from remote locations. It uses various data such as speed, position, course, and type of vessel to track ships. AIS makes ship-to-ship communication possible and is a valuable asset for marine authorities. It can provide real-time data on the location of vessels, such as where they are, how fast they're moving, their destination, etc. The system has significantly improved safety in shipping operations by providing information to oil tankers to avoid collisions and to identify any vessel that might be in distress easily. As the war in Ukraine continues, an increasing number of Russian tankers carrying crude oil and petroleum products are disappearing from tracking systems. This phenomenon, known as dark activity, occurs when ships' transponders are turned off for extended periods. U.S. officials have historically viewed this behavior as a deceptive shipping practice that is often used to evade sanction. According to predictive intelligence company Windward, dark activity among Russian-affiliated crude oil tankers has increased by 600% compared to before the war began. This suggests that Russian oil exporters are increasingly turning off their transponders to evade sanctions and continue to sell oil to countries that are backing Ukraine. This could indicate that Russian oil exporters are becoming more sophisticated in evading sanctions, making it more difficult to track the flow of Russian oil exports. You need to tap into this dark fleet, and it's not limitless, she said. Iran and Venezuela are using it rather effectively, but you might face competition with the same targets. This cat-and-mouse game is always inherent in sanctions mechanisms. In light of the proposed cap on the price of Russian oil exports and the increasing difficulty in obtaining shipping insurance from Western nations, Russia is considering developing its own insurance companies to ensure the safe and secure transport of its oil exports. This would allow Russia to bypass the restrictions imposed by Western nations and avoid the need to rely on insurance providers for coverage. According to reports, there are already several insurance providers in China that could offer insurance to Russian cargo. Even if these companies are initially reluctant, the Chinese government will likely tacitly encourage them to do so. This would allow Russia to maintain its oil exports to China and other countries that are not backing the sanctions imposed by Western nations. Currently, a shipping and oil analyst in Oslo said that most Russian cargoes are covered by Russian P&I providers, but creating domestic insurance providers would greatly enhance their reliability and security in transmitting oil. Russia might also stop oil supplies in reaction to the cap in an effort to benefit from a sharp increase in the price of oil on anything it can sell outside of the reach of the sanctions. This could result in a significant increase in global oil prices, as the loss of Russian oil exports would remove a significant amount of oil from the global market. This could have far-reaching consequences, as higher oil prices would impact economies around the world, particularly those that are heavily dependent on oil imports. It's also likely that Russia's move could cause other oil-producing countries also to cut their production and exports, potentially driving oil prices even higher. The ongoing conflict between Russia, the US, and Europe will continue to shape the oil market. It's essential to stay informed about the latest developments in this ongoing war to anticipate the future movement of prices. The escalating Russo-Ukrainian conflict has led to a series of sanctions being imposed on Russia by Western nations, with the goal of isolating Russia from the global financial system and weakening its military edge. However, Russia has responded with counter-sanctions and continues to occupy the Crimean Peninsula while taking steps to modernize its military capabilities. The future of Russia's relationship with the West lies heavily on how these issues are addressed and resolved. One thing is for certain: the ongoing international sanctions have dramatically impacted both countries and will undoubtedly continue to do so. What do you think? Can Russia prevent its economy from collapsing and potentially causing inflation in the West? Or will implementing a price cap lead to Russia's decline? Share your thoughts in the comment section with us, and remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.